Hi, we're Diamond and Silk, and we love the Naked Truth Report.
Warning, the following program has been rated T for truth.
You can't handle the truth!
Oh, we think you can. Welcome to the Naked Truth Report with your host, truth warrior and mythbuster Kathleen Wells. The place where we distinguish fact from fiction, where data is used to drive points home, and where Kathleen takes the position that Democrats and black politicians have destroyed black America. Welcome to the Naked Truth Report. Now, your host, Kathleen Wells.
Welcome to the Naked Truth Report. I'm your host, Kathleen Wells. Of course, you realize that. I was listening to the radio driving into the station, Chuck Todd on Meet the Press, and they were the governor of Mississippi was talking about this week the Supreme Court will decide on the case whether or not the case from Mississippi, the case law, the complaint, the lawsuit filed by Mississippi, or the law that they would ban abortions bans abortions after 15 weeks. This is interesting. I knew it had been mentioned, and now this will be something interesting to look at and see how the Supreme Court decides this issue. How it will impact Roe v. Wade. I'm surprised we haven't heard more about it, like protesters, I guess because it was the long weekend. I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving. I'm excited to have my guest today because initially, you guys know who've been listening to the show for a long time. The reason why I no longer could support the Democratic Party the main reason was because of immigration. What I learned about immigration, high immigration and illegal aliens, what I learned from studying or getting the data from Dr. Claude Anderson, that's when I no longer could decide to support the Democratic Party. How that high immigration and illegal aliens has adversely impacted black America forever and a day. I said, oh my God, when you learn this data, when black Americans support the Democratic Party, they are unlearned. They are unknowledgeable. They haven't learned the data. They haven't learned the history. And this is what this book does. It's Back of the Hiring Line, a 200-year history of immigration surges, employer bias, and depression of black wealth. Now, when I just finished reading it, and I encourage you to read it also, this history, so that you have specifics to be able to talk about. Now, when I talk about reparations for black, I know conservatives don't go for reparations, but I bring another bent or understanding to that issue. Because conservatives like Tucker Carlson, they always start at slavery. And I say, no, it's not about slavery. It's what happened subsequent to slavery. The black codes, the ending of Reconstruction, the Tilden Hayes Compromise, the high immigration, the free sex feminism, the illegal immigration. It's all the Jim Crow and the Jane, all that stuff. It's what happened subsequent to slavery. Because for every step forward that blacks made, black Americans, and I'm not talking, when I say blacks, I'm not talking about Kamala Harris or even Obama. I'm talking about the descendants of American slaves. And you see, and it's interesting that Kamala Harris is not a descendant of American slave, nor Obama. But that's when you have Tucker Carlson and all conservatives talk about reparations and this is what I want to talk about with my guest, Roy Beck, who I'm getting ready to bring on right now. Even Trump said black Americans should get $500 billion and 500,000 black businesses. Even he is aware of that fact. And then why? Because black Americans who are the descendants of American slaves are facing zero median wealth by 2053. That's relevant. That matters. Anyway, Roy Beck, welcome to the Naked Truth Report.
Thank you, Kathleen. Good to be with you tonight.
I'm glad to have you. So your book, a 200-year history of the immigration surges, employer bias, and depression of black wealth, Back of the Hiring Line. So I read your book. It's wonderful. I appreciate it. And I'm glad that it's sort of like a 200-year summary of what has been going on for black Americans. And basically, Congress, politicians have failed Black Americans. Would you agree?
Well, yes, and as you know from getting towards the back of the book, we've had this situation where Congress, in some ways, as I write, accidentally restarted mass immigration in 1965, and I'm sure we'll talk about what had happened in those 40 years before, when Black Americans had done very well economically during low immigration. But in 1965, Congress restarted mass immigration. The best we can tell, they didn't really intend to start mass immigration, but they were careless in how they wrote the immigration law change. However, within about 3 or 4 years, many people realized, oh my goodness, this is not doing what it's supposed to do. And Congress formed a federal commission called the Rockefeller Commission. And by 1972, just 7 years after the 65 Immigration Act, they determined this is not good. Mass immigration has been restarted. It's not good for the country. And they specifically said it's particularly not good for Black Americans who, in 1965, Congress was trying to help, because in 1964 and 1965, Congress was passing the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act to remove legal barriers. But the 1965 Immigration Act erected major economic barriers for restarting mass immigration. So this Rockefeller Commission recommended we need to turn this back. Congress ignored it. A few years later, the problems got worse. Black economic progress stopped, and that is on the average it has stopped. College graduates, by the way, Black college graduates did fairly well, but any Black, or I should say, on average, Black Americans who did not have a college degree, and of course most Americans of all races don't have college degrees, they were falling backwards. And another commission was formed, and it was called the Father Hesburgh Commission, and they recommended the same thing. They said you've got to cut immigration back. It's killing what the country's been trying to do, which is to basically eliminate the economic differences between Black Americans, the descendants of slavery, and the rest of Americans. Congress ignored them again. This time, more and more, they had these rising ethnic political bosses and the business lobbies, cheap labor business lobbies, they ignored. And again in 1990, there was another commission, and that was the Barbara Jordan Commission. They recommended the same thing. They were ignored. So what we've had is 50 years of commissions, federal commissions, saying this is what's happening. This is really undercutting the Black working class and Black underclass, and always Congress, every single Congress since 1965, has chosen to basically abandon the Black working class and the Black underclass. So that's a bit of a long litany to say you're exactly right. Congress has put its thumb on the scales against the interests of struggling Black Americans.
Yeah, and there's actually more than 9,000 Black politicians. And so it becomes meaningless. In fact, many Black Americans, I blame Black Americans because the onus is upon them to get informed and to get educated and to know the history and know the data. But our Black politicians and Black talking heads like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, I even met with Al Sharpton at the Congressional Black Caucus legislative hearing about 3 years ago. I presented these issues to him. I even spoke with Sheila Jackson Lee. The Black leaders mislead Black Americans. So there's this deception.
There are Black leaders like you, Kathleen, and there are more, and that's the optimism that I have, is that there are more that are speaking up, and some are taking a very strong stand like you are. Others are kind of tiptoeing into the waters, and being willing to explore this. And, some major communicators like Professor Glenn Lowry and Professor John McWhorter, who are starting to speak up. And so we're not getting much help from black politicians at this point. That is, the black working class black Americans aren't, but they are getting more and more, I think, attention and help from African American communicators. And I'm hopeful that we are going to see a time sometime soon where we're going to see some major black politicians finally break through. But right now, we've gone through decades in which the major black political apparatus has bonded with this idea of people of color instead of representing the interests of the descendants of slavery. It's joining this idea of people of color, and it's a mistaken idea that somehow or another you're helping Hispanics and other groups that are say struggling people that are not white, not European descendants. But in fact, when it comes to Americans, and I'm talking about people who are American citizens, U.S. citizens, this book, as you know, shows repeatedly every time there was an immigration change, which means a reduction that helped the descendants of black Americans, the descendants of slavery, it also helped the immigrants that are already in this country. Mm-hmm. So basically, this idea that somehow or another black Americans have to sacrifice jobs and wages to help other people of, quote, color it's just wrong, because actually it's hurting those people. The only people that it helps are the new people who want to come in. Of course, everybody that comes in the country immediately is helped by coming into the country. But once they're here, it's the new ways of immigration that keeps them down as well. However, that middle line, I talk about it's a history of immigration surges, number one, employer bias, number two, depression of black wealth, number three. That middle one, employer bias, as I've shown through the book by pointing to the studies that show how it works, there's just enough employer bias that will always, on average, put black applicants at the back of the hiring line. Will always put immigrants in front of the descendants of slavery in the hiring line. And so the longer the hiring line, the more you fill that hiring line with immigrants, the farther back you put millions of black Americans from being able to have the dignity of a job. And this has been going on now since 1965. So we're talking about more than a half century of Congress using immigration to disadvantage the very people the very people who are driving this policy will tell you that they are champions of African Americans. Right? Not just African American politicians, but lots of politicians, and some and not just one party either at times. And they'll claim they're champions of African Americans, but they've absolutely turned a blind eye to the effect of mass immigration on struggling African Americans.
And the data is clear. And as I said, when I spoke with Sheila Jackson Lee, they like to ignore it. And so it's a deception, because we can assume that a politician and talking heads like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton have a level of intelligence that they understand that there's data and history out there that is clear. And also you can see the empirical evidence, okay? So they can see what's happening in Los Angeles, where you have 40% homeless or black folks, okay? So you have to assume it's deception. They're deceiving black Americans. And the onus is on black Americans to get their act together. Their leaders, or there should be groups of black Americans that should say, forget what the politicians are doing. It behooves us to start our own businesses up and down Crenshaw Boulevard, to get together and do that. But they just keep following. In fact, I was listening to Washington Journal this morning, and a woman they asked what grade would you give Kamala Harris? And these black folks that call into the Washington Journal, they think Kamala Harris is a black American. They even say African American, and they think that immigration is irrelevant. Because one of the women called in and she said, well, you guys, because conservatives call in and complain about what's happening at the border regarding this, I have to say I can't say it because they will ban me on YouTube, because I'd like to have the show downloaded to YouTube. I'll say the V or the C. Do you know what I mean by those VC, those initials? Yes, right? You get... But the jab, I don't know if I can say that, but the algorithm will ban me. But because conservatives will call in and say these folks coming in are not getting the V, okay, and they shouldn't be coming in. But Democrats, and mostly blacks, because everyone is abandoning Biden and Kamala Harris except black folks, generally speaking, and they will call in and say, I don't care what's happening at the border. Why do you guys keep bringing up the border? This level of ignorance is mind-blowing, that you cannot understand that more people coming in, no matter where they're coming in, are competing for jobs. And I don't understand how these people don't understand it. And that's why I say the onus, black Americans can't expect other people to take care of them. Yes, maybe Americans owe the descendants of American slaves something because they've never gotten anything. But nonetheless, don't wait for it. Don't expect it.
Well, Kathleen, one of the reasons I started writing this book almost a year ago, just before New Year's, was the event that happened all last year. You know, the burning down of more communities, black communities, the anger, the sustained anger that with people kind of often destroying their own neighborhoods. I realize there's a lot of outsiders that helped with that, but you know, there's more than a police incident that keeps that kind of rage going for that amount of time. And I think many people observed that where you saw this happening was communities and where high percentages of especially men and young men don't have jobs and have not really been so many have not been in the workforce hardly at all. Often they've observed fathers and even grandfathers who have not been in the workforce, because the fact is that since 1965 and the renewal of mass immigration, less educated black labor. So I'm not talking about the black middle class and the college degree black, because actually did quite well. But the less educated black population has been abandoned by our economy. The employers just basically don't need their labor. They don't need their labor. They don't recruit. And this is where I'm going to kind of I guess stand up a little bit about, you know, when you're talking about ignorance and needing to step forward. It's hard to step forward when you don't, and you hit it this while ago, when you don't have leaders that you're looking to who are telling you what's really what's happened. They maybe don't understand what's happened. The other thing is that if you've lived, if some of these communities, and believe me, this is not just black communities, this has happened in every white communities, rural white communities, as well as urban, and it happens in Hispanic communities, but it happens more in black communities. It's disproportionately the black communities where regular work, the dignity of work and of earning your wages and having control of your lives, it's been taken out for so long that it's going to take real recruitment on the part of employers to move a lot of these people back into the job market. And these employers are not going to recruit in those communities as long as they're provided hungry, eager foreign workers who arrive exactly for the reason to work. And why don't we take a moment to just talk about what happened when mass immigration was cut off during World War I, and then by Congress in the 20s, because we actually can see what the tremendous benefits that can happen when that goes on. And Los Angeles, I know that most African Americans, not Caribbean immigrants and immigrants from Africa of the last 50 years, I'm talking African Americans in Los Angeles. Their parents or grandparents came during the Great Migration, didn't they, from the South, during that period of the 20s through the 60s. And
including my parents.
There you go.
Yeah.
And Los Angeles was the promised land.
Mm-hmm.
It was a place where Southern blacks had been working on or near the plantations where their ancestors had been slaves. They broke loose. They had the Great Migration. They moved to places like Los Angeles. They established a thriving culture. As I write about in the book, the studies find tremendous economic advancement in terms of increases in incomes that happened during the time. Well, why didn't that happen in, say, the 1880s or the 1890s or 1910? Well, the reason was we had the Great Wave, not the Great Migration, we had the Great Wave of foreign immigration during that time, which was the same kind of high immigration that we have now. And the northern industrialists and the western industrialists, they sent ships over and brought in Europeans. At that time, it was all white Europeans, and brought them in to fill their factories. There was no place for the descendants of slaves to go to work. But then when World War I broke out, the ships couldn't safely sail to bring the immigrants in. And immediately, the northern, especially the northern industrialists, they needed black labor. And within a few months, they were sending armies of recruiters, of recruitment agents throughout the South. They would meet people in their homes. They'd meet people in the fields, and they were signing them up, giving them train tickets, paying their way to go north, and boom! All of a sudden, there were 6 million over a period of 40 years, but there were 6 million descendants of slaves broke loose of the Jim Crow South and found not paradise, because there's a lot of work to do, but they found real opportunity because those recruiters, those industrialists, they needed that black labor. But see, right now we're awash in foreign labor, and most industrialists they don't bother to recruit in the inner cities of Black America. And I really believe, because of the past, that if Congress would do something like pass Tom Cotton's RAISE Act, cut immigration even just in half, that we would see this country start to be interested again in black labor.
Well, and I also want to mention that during Jim Crow, Black Americans owned 40% of their businesses. So, they were doing better, actually, during segregation, because we don't own any businesses now, or only 7% of businesses. When we had to rely on each other, we were, because there was a middle class in the South during Jim Crow, like Martin Luther. There's my music, but we're going to take, are you open to taking phone calls, Roy?
You bet.
Okay, we're going to take phone calls. We're going to the break. I'm speaking with Roy Beck. His book is, go to my website and you can purchase it on my website. And you got to get it, because while you learn, it's about learning. We want to know the information so that we know that we're talking about. So it's a wonderful summary, Back of the Hiring Line by Roy Beck. You can purchase it on my website. Go to my website and purchase it. And we'll be right back, and we'll take questions with Roy Beck.
Hi, you guys. Happy holidays. I'm Antoinette, one of the avid listeners of the Naked Truth Report. Go to her website, scroll down, and let's donate $1 or more to expand her program. Happy holidays.
Efforts by Black Americans to build wealth can be traced back throughout American history, but these efforts have been impeded in a host of ways, beginning with 46 years of chattel slavery and followed by congressional mismanagement of the Freedmen's Savings Bank, which left 61,144 depositors with losses of nearly $3 million in 1874, the violent massacre decimating Tulsa Greenwood District in 1921, a population of 10,000 that thrived at the epicenter of African American business and culture, commonly referred to as Black Wall Street, the discrimination policies throughout the 20th century, including the Jim Crow era black codes, strictly limiting opportunity in many southern states, the GI Bill, the New Deal's fair labor standards, exemption of domestic agricultural and service occupations, and redlining. And I also want to mention free sex feminism, and LBJ's Great Society, because those policies took black men out of the home. And talk to us about the importance, Roy, talk to us about the importance of a man to have a job, to have work. Talk about that importance to men.
Well, it's very difficult for maybe most people, but especially men, who have jobs, who've had the joy of work, of regular work, to imagine truly being a man without being productive, without being able to take care of your family. If you and maybe you're not married, maybe you don't have children, but you still have family to be able to participate in that. There was a W.E.B. Du Bois, who certainly was one of the great African American leaders of the early part of the 20th century, founder of the NAACP. He observed early on. He says, most women. He found that most black women, if their man was not showing the ability to really bring an income in, even if she had children by that man, she really wasn't very interested in marrying that person. Now, I'm not saying that's a racial thing. I imagine that's true of everybody, but I'm quoting W.E.B. Du Bois on that. And, this is there in my book. I do quote various folks, various experts about how difficult it is for there to be fathers in the home of black children when such a high percentage of black men do not make an income. They may not make an income at all, and if they do make an income, it's not enough to have a family afford poverty. So what you do is you just lose dignity. Everybody, not just black men, all men lose dignity. Now, I mean, if you're obviously some men have some health issue that can keep them from having to work, but that's not true of most men that aren't working. I mean, one of the statistics that I hit on over and over again is just heartbreaking, and that is of black men who are in working age, the prime working age, 25 to 54, who don't have a high school degree. 2 out of every 3 are not working. 2 out of every 3. Now, imagine what that does to the community. And even among black men who have a high school degree, 40% of black men who have a high school degree are not working. That's devastating inside communities. And of course, it's not. The fact is that in various communities, it's not 40% that aren't working. It's 60 and 70%. Because when you're in middle class black communities, you've got very high male workforce participation. So this is a hollowing of many African American leaders and spokesmen have spoken about this. The hollowing out of the black male pride and a sense of place in the community. And my argument is that immigration policy, mass immigration, has not been the only cause of that. And in many cases, it's not been the number one cause. But it's one, as I'm able to show through the various studies, it is one of the major causes, one of them. And it's a cause, it doesn't have to happen. This is our Congress. We only have this level of immigration, both legal and illegal, because Congress decides it. Congress decides it's going to have high legal immigration, and then it decides it's going to allow high illegal immigration because it won't pass mandatory verify to keep illegal workers from getting jobs. So this is a congressional decision, and it's a congressional decision that could be changed overnight, and it is the simplest, the fastest way to create benefits for struggling black men to get into the workforce and to join the rest of, join all the other working men of America, the black and the white and the Hispanic and the Asian working men, it's just an intrinsic, integral part of what a man is, isn't it?
Yes, yes. And you talk about when you were able to pay your way through journalism school in Missouri, isn't that correct? You were employed. You were able to pay your way through.
Well, I was. And look, here's the great advantage. I was born into a working class family in which, every man I knew was working. And so, I had that benefit. But I didn't have the benefit of any financial support for college. I earned every dollar. And so over an 8-year period of summer jobs and working during college, I was a production line steel plant welder. I was a roofer. I worked in the hay fields. I was a landscaper. I did whatever job came along. I was a gopher on bridge construction. And the great thing in the 1960s when I was doing that is I could work at the bottom rung of those ladders, and the wages were far better, real wages, than now, because that was still tight labor markets. And I could earn my way through college. Unfortunately, a person working those jobs today, with the skyrocketing cost of college and with the depressed wages that we've had over the last 40 years, not so easy now. But yes, I mean, so obviously I've been a very lucky person. I've been a journalist, so I have not had to work with my hands once I got out of college. And but having done that, and I think every college graduate needs to remember that all of our lives are dependent on the people who are working with their hands, who are collecting the garbage and fixing the plumbing and keeping the streets paved, and on and on and on. But we've got this dichotomy in this country that the college graduates in this country are I'm not saying all of them, but they are the primary drivers of this high immigration policy. They are the elites that insist on high immigration, and of course they benefit because they have the resources to hire the cheap nannies and the landscapers and in many cases they own businesses and they're able to hire cheaper labor, and they make themselves feel better, morally superior to the blue collar workers of America, the non-college degree workers of America. They feel morally superior because they are so welcoming of people coming in from everywhere else, but they don't have to pay the price. The people they look down on who are concerned about this flow of foreign labor, they're the ones that have to pay the price for these college degree elites who feel so morally superior.
Mm-hmm. And it's actually amoral and immoral to keep black Americans who are the direct descendants of slaves subjugated or relegated to a permanent underclass. It's immoral. So they shouldn't feel good about themselves. So why don't we take a call now from Mike in El Segundo? Hi, Mike. Welcome to the Naked Truth Report.
Hi, Kathleen. Thank you. Patrice Cullors, one of the three co-founders of Black Lives Matter, she had, in a video I saw on YouTube, she had highly commended Mao Zedong's Little Red Book. And she also had said that she and one of the other two co-founders were trained Marxists and trained community organizers. So I thought I'd read that book and see what's in it. I did. And it was very interesting because the Democrat Party seems to be very closely following Mao's Little Red Book to achieve a communist dictatorship. And one of the things in that book is that the communists are supposed to keep the poor people poor, keep them down, so they'll be more likely to support a communist revolution, including a violent revolution. And I was just wondering what both of you thought about that, because there seems to be a lot of data supporting that, going back to creating the Johnson's Great Society, the welfare state, splitting up black families. The Democrat Party's used gun control law going back to slavery.
Well, I think that mass immigration is shrinking the middle class. It's shrinking the middle class all across America and disproportionately black Americans. And shrinking the middle class is what communist Marxists want. They want the poor and the rich. Would you agree, Roy?
Well, I mean, supposedly once the revolution happens, everybody is supposed to be put on an even scale. Of course, we know that has never happened. But yes, no, Mike, you're right that part of the strategy of these revolutions has been is that things have to get bad enough for people to really turn to a communist revolution, and so it is helpful to keep them down. Now, I don't think that most people who are pushing high immigration that they have that in mind. That's not their thought. But I do believe, and I think this is what you're suggesting, is that there are people though that are involved in accelerating and I guess the kind of people who will call anybody like us that pushes for less immigration will call us racist.
Right.
Well, that's because they need this mass immigration to continue to build timber in the inner cities throughout the country, because these riots and burning communities down, that's the kind of thing that can foment revolution, and of course it can also foment overreaction from the government, which can also then speed up the reaction back. So no, there's no question that there are both anarchists and Marxist revolutionaries that are involved in trying to keep America from moving forward, and that's very scary.
Yes, it is scary.
Another point I'd like to add to all this is also the massive illegal immigration, in addition to the Democrat Party importing more future Democrat voters, and they want to fast-track them to citizenship and voting rights. But on top of that, it seems that this massive illegal immigration is consistent with the Cloward-Piven strategy from the 1960s to overload the system. They targeted the welfare system, but since then the Democrat Party's expanded it to everything from health care to prisons to education, everything. So massive illegal immigration overloads all of our systems in our society, and then once everything is destroyed, then the Democrat Party can come along and say, well, we need much more power in government. People don't need that much freedom. We'll fix the problem, even though they created it. Of course, blacks get thrown under the bus in all this. Just an example, if you don't speak Spanish, there's a lot of jobs that are not open to you today here in America because of the massive illegal immigration.
And I don't understand how people can think that Congress has not done anything. D.C. has not done anything right. LBJ's Great Society was not beneficial in the long term. And so why do you think this Build Back Better bill will be? Why do Democrats actually, they don't know any history. Why would they believe the Build Back Better bill would be beneficial to Americans as a whole? Roy, let me ask you. I'm asking Roy.
Okay, sure.
Roy, why do you?
I think there's lots of reasons there, but of course we know that the issue that we're discussing here, which is immigration, and the immigration provision in that Build Back Better bill is just absolutely astounding. That the American people have risen up and fought an amnesty every single year since 2000, and have stopped every single one of those amnesties. But now they're using this reconciliation process that just requires 51 votes in the Senate. The House just narrowly passed that bill a couple of weeks ago, and it would legalize and give 10-year work permits to about 2/3 of all the illegal aliens in this country, and at the same time, the Biden administration has ended nearly every form of enforcement. There's no you really have to literally kill somebody in order to get deported right now. So the word around the world is if you come to Disneyland on a vacation, you will never have to leave. Your visa may tell you to go back. You never have to leave. And you can get a job. You can take a job. Nobody will prosecute you for that. Nobody will prosecute the employer. It is basically open borders. If you can get across the border, there's still some border patrol that are allowed to do a little bit of policing. But if you get across the border or come in on a visitor visa, there's absolutely nothing but killing somebody that would cause you to ever have to leave. And so we're in a massive danger. And boy, if you are working in more of the bottom rungs of the ladder, it's the future looks terrible. So why would they do that? You say, why would they do it? I believe from our talking with people here in Washington, D.C., is that they have a higher need to satisfy certain political blocs, including when I talk with Democratic offices, I find that they seem to be more concerned about how the business lobbyists from their districts react than even what the leftists want. So the Democrats are being driven very much true by the cheap labor lobbyists as well. But they're more concerned about that, and they have this hope. They're almost whistling past the graveyard, hoping that somehow or another what they're hearing about that's happening at the bottom of the economic system isn't going to continue. It'll work itself out. It's almost like a sense of mass amnesia or something like that. Because I really don't believe that most of the people who are pushing this particular amnesty are trying to ruin America and are trying to make the lives of non-college degree descendants of slaves horrific.
Well, I think that they're oblivious, or what is the word I'm looking for? Indifferent. They don't, and I think they believe in. They're indifferent, and they believe in globalization. Yeah.
The word I used throughout my book at every stage since 1965 is the indifference of the political class, the indifference of the economic elites. They are, most of them, in fact, many of you'll see all these businesses that stepped up with these big donations to Black Lives Matter, making big statements. Remember last year, statements of solidarity? But in terms of whether they would actually try to recruit Black Americans from these inner cities of America, no, they're not doing that. They're indifferent. They truly are indifferent to what it's like in the real world for all of these millions of men who are not working.
Right. Why don't we take call number 2, Ernest in Los Angeles. Welcome to the Naked Truth Report.
Yes, I actually have a lot to say, but I'll keep it short. I grew up in Los Angeles. My parents came here from the South. My father was a doctor. And as you say, Los Angeles was a mecca for Black Americans, especially for physicians. In Los Angeles, we had, I went all the doctors my parents took me to were black doctors. Dentists, pediatricians, bone specialists, et cetera, and now it's all of that's been wiped out. And part of what I don't agree with you on is that you're saying that blacks are being pushed out from unskilled labor, and that's not true, because we're getting wiped out from medicine. I did study medicine actually in the 80s. I actually got I switched from that to a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. And
he discusses that in the book. That he discusses.
I haven't seen the book yet.
You got to get it. It's on my website.
To sum it all up, is we're being wiped out of the professional positions also.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like, to me, Los Angeles is the second Black Wall Street, like Tulsa, Oklahoma, second Black Wall Street atrocity.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry.
I can give you one specific example. Several years ago, about maybe a year and a half ago, I was working for Anthem Blue Cross Insurance Company in Cerritos. And I was working there. I was inside their building as doing security work. And I was applying to try to get into their IT department. So I was able to meet some of their IT staff there, and the managers and the directors of the department. And I was talking to them about I wanted to work there and I was applying, blah, blah, blah. And all of them, except one, were Indonesian. And they were getting over here from on that, it was an H-1B1 visa.
Yeah.
They were only hiring from H-1B1 visa. But I talked to the director, and he was telling me that he was saying, well, I was asking about where's the main data centers that for their insurance company. He said all of them are in India, and all of the workers over here are from India.
Yeah.
And now I filed a complaint. With the EEOC about that. And the EEOC wrote me back and said, well, we don't have any jurisdiction. We're not going to do anything about it, and they closed the case.
Mm. Okay, Roy. Thanks, Ernest. He talks about that in his book. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a tremendous problem. I primarily focus on non-college degree descendants of slavery. However, I do talk some about the problem, especially in the IT industry. But here's the thing, Kathleen, is that he mentions about the doctors. I said early on that this country has been warned, Congress has been warned by one blue ribbon commission after another that just ignored it. But in 1972, the Rockefeller Commission even then said that immigration was keeping medical schools from expanding their enrollments, and especially from recruiting and training African American doctors. And they said, here's a quote: "The fact that there are more, this is 72, there are more registered Filipino doctors than black doctors practicing in the United States shows inequities that can arise." And so these were not like Filipino Americans. These were doctors imported from the Philippines. More doctors imported from the Philippines than all the African American doctors in the country. And this trend has just continued over and over again. Well, we're about out of time, Kathleen, but I thank you for giving this subject its publicity. I appreciate you bringing this book to your audience. I hope you'll continue to remind them of it, because I do believe that what I've been told by many African Americans who read it is that now I have
evidence.
rock solid that I can stand on to believe in, that I do not have to budge in arguing for the priority for the descendants of slavery on this issue.
Okay, Roy Brett, thank you very much. Folks, Truth Warriors, go to my website and purchase the book. It's Back of the Hiring Line. This book is evidence, okay, because it's chock full of data and information, and so you can specifically name things. You know what you're talking about, because people deny, like Sheila Jackson Lee and Al Sharpton. Thank you, Roy Beck. This is the Naked Truth Report. I'm your host, Kathleen Wells, and I'll see you next week.